So this is the second part of chapter 7. I just want to point out, like, even though Carson and Lewis both live on the res, they're leading very different lives, right? It starts with things like the stupid things, like in Carson's house, there's Carson and his sister and both of his parents. In Lewis's house, it's his mom and his uncle, with whom, by the way, he still shares a bedroom. Carson's family has a car. Lewis's does not. Carson's family's Christmas looks like they have money that they can spend on Christmas presents, whereas it's going to be very different for Lewis and his home. So even though they're friends, and I mean, I don't think Carson is I don't know if I would classify Carson at this point as a very good friend, right? Or a decent friend. They have things in common. They're both Indian kids. They're both trying to blend into the white world. But at the same time, their home lives are very, very different. All right, let's go on. I'm on page 82, towards the middle. So listen, I have an idea, he said, dangling the keys. Hang on a second. He ran back up and came back down, grabbing his coat. What are you doing? I asked, following him out the door with my own coat on. We're taking you shopping, he said, hopping back into the car. Sheila and Derek are both crashing, watching TV. They'll be there for hours and won't even know we're gone. All righty, off to the mall. I could hear Albert in my head, even as I got in the car. We were two freshly minted teenagers with no licenses and unknown levels of driving experience crossing over into the white world on a winter night. This has bad idea written all over it. I can't afford anything at the mall, was all that I could think to say. Fine, we'll go to Jupiter, he said. Jupiter was a discount store. Perfect, except that it was on Main Street in Niagara Falls. Before I could protest, he laughed. Gloomis, why are you so gullible? How's Town's Pharmacy? I'll take all the back roads. How's Town's Pharmacy? I take all the back roads. Can you find enough stuff there? I think so, I said. It was the longest 5-mile drive I'd ever been on, seeing imaginary cop cars the whole way. I was glad that at least Carson was tall enough to pass for a short adult. I also had time to think one smart move ahead. As soon as he put the car into park, I snatched the keys, turned the ignition, and pulled them out. What the hell are you doing? He yelled as I stuffed them into my front jeans pocket. Making sure I'm not walking home from here, I said. Oh, the thanks I get. You'll get thanks when we're back on reservation land. And with that, I headed into the store and grabbed a basket. I got Albert a pair of gloves, real winter gloves, lined, and my sister Charlotte's family a large chocolate assortment. I already had my Ma's gift, a poker set, since another of a few luxuries was Saturday night res nickel-and-dime poker parties. The only one I had to left buy for was Zach. I wandered through the store, worried that Carson might have been smart enough to grab both sets of keys from his house. He walked in a minute or so later and seemed to recognize nobody. I could hear them talking as I trolled the aisles, hoping to find an idea. And there it was in aisle 6. A car cleaning kit with soap, wax, rubbing compound, a soft buffing cloth, and a selection of 12 air fresheners, all neatly packaged together, perfect for Zach's Dodge Challenger. I had enough money in my pocket, so I put in my basket and headed to the checkout. There I saw Carson talking with the Wedgie King, who was buying a case of Labatt with fake ID. Labatt is Canadian beer. It shouldn't have worked. He was maybe 15, but the Wedgie King was just tough-looking enough to be convincing as one of those wiry men you always see looking for fights at carnival beer tents. Carson said something to him and left while the Wedgie King paid. I stalled, looking around. I didn't want the king to see me and decide he needed to prove his new fake manhood. By the time I got out of the lot, the only car there was Sophronia's. I didn't see any other fresh tracks, so the king must live nearby in Misty Meadows. Carson sat in the passenger side with all doors locked except the driver's. I yelled for him to move over, but he just grinned and pointed to the driver's side door. I could see 4 beer bottles shining in the seat next to him. So this is a bench seat where you have like 3 seats in the front. So you have Carson in the passenger side, and then somewhere in the middle are these beers rolling around, and then of course Louis in the driver's side. Funny again, I said, digging in my pocket for the keys. You gonna climb over me? Oh no, you wanted those keys so bad? You're driving us home, he said. I don't know how to drive, I said. Well, you're getting your first lesson tonight, he said. And what's with the beers? Well, if Sheila discovers we're gone, they're bribery. Otherwise, they're our celebration of your first drive. You should be thankful. Who else would take you out on a cold December night so you could get presents? Not your ma, for sure, and not that white kid you've been hanging out with. I was wondering when George was going to come up. It was clear at the concert reception that he and Carson weren't likely to ever get along. Carson only liked people that backed down, and George didn't seem to be that kind of person. Now Carson was acting like it was a violation of our friendship that I'd made a new friend who was not from home, even though he had clearly gotten those beers from the Wedgie King. If I ditch this car or get pulled over, then what are you going to do? I asked, hoping his sense of self-preservation was intact. I'll say you threatened me and kept me as a hostage in my ma's car. They believe me. After all, what kind of fool gets the keys taken away from him? Now put the key in the ignition and turn it the opposite of the way you did when you stole them from me. I did what I was told, and the car heaved and rumbled alive. Now, put 1 foot on the brake and 1 on the gas, and you just play the right one. As little as I knew about driving, I knew this advice was wrong. Why is it wrong? Because you're not supposed to put both feet on both pedals. You're supposed to do everything with just 1 foot. So I put my right foot on the brake and pulled the gear shift into reverse. Going backward was super disorienting. I'd looked in a rearview mirror before, but had never had to depend on one. Fortunately, the parking lot was empty, and eventually I got us out of it and moving forward down the side roads. I knew that if any cop saw us, he would be sure to pull us over, and then being lonely in class would be the least of my worries. The wheel felt strange, the slightest move causing us to wander a bit from our lane. And at first, I couldn't step on the gas right. I either had us going 5 miles an hour or creeping fast up to 45. It didn't help that Carson was screeching with laughter and pounding on the dashboard the whole time. But finally I got a decent grip on the wheel and stopped goosing the pedal. No matter how many times you ride in a car, there's no feeling like the one you have when you're in control. I could see now why Zach would give up almost anything to keep his Challenger. I would too. Still, as we approached the res, there was a different issue at hand. Being around George had shown me a new way to have friends, one that didn't require you to always be on your guard. When I got to Pembroke, I had the blinker to turn left. Wait, this isn't where we're turning, Carson said, suddenly serious. It's where I'm turning, I said, and headed into the res, following the same path Albert had a few days before. Carson knew as soon as I hit Dog Street what I was doing. If you go home, I'll keep your clothes. I hadn't been smart enough to sneak them back. Okay, I said, if they mean that much to you. I'd had it with his bullshit. The res was a small place, so I was stuck with him, but that didn't mean that I had to be his fool forever. Come on, man. Tonight I gave you your first opportunity ever to drive. How can you do this? I knew as soon as you started hanging out with that white kid, you'd think you were too good to hang out with Indians anymore. What are you gonna do, marry him like all these assholes around here who knock up white women? Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do, I said. Is that what you're gonna do with the Wedgie King? Oh, wait a minute. He doesn't even know you're Indian. Who's the Wedgie King? That jerk you got those beers off, I said, stopping on the road in front of my house and putting Sophronia's car in park. At least pull in the driveway, he yelled. There might be a car coming. No, there might be. Guess you'll have to climb over and drive off yourself. Have a good New Year, I said, and got out of the car. I thought we were going New Year'ing together, he said, climbing out. I was going to pick you up like we used to. Like we used to 3 years ago? Like when you always stole the best cookies out of my bag when you thought I wasn't looking? I said. As he scrambled around, I walked up my driveway, not even looking back. I heard him yell, "Asshole!" before he jumped in and took off. Nuya. I'd sort of been blocking myself off from thinking about it. Our ceremonial, the native Indian calendar, okay? Our ceremonial calendar followed the moons, and it placed the beginning of the year around February. So generations ago, we'd invented a tradition for young people to respect their elders and let them know when the outside world would recognize the new year a full month before us. The young go to all the houses and let them know a new year has come. In return, the elder rewarded you with a treat, something they spent time on as a thank you. Running back to the car first and raiding my bag had been one of Carson's personal traditions. I never had any other ride, and beyond his pathetic thievery, I'd still enjoyed ringing in the new year with him, but you can only be burned so many times. When we stopped doing it together, I told him it was because I was babysitting for my sister's kids, but really, it was because I came home every year with half as many cookies in my bag as I put in. "You're home early," my ma said as I walked in with my town pharmacy bag. "Well, someone was sick at their house," I said, the lie sliding easy off my tongue. Since I'd started lying a bit to George, it was coming almost naturally, like a developed skill. Sophronia didn't want to risk spreading it. I went upstairs where Albert was still on his bed reading. "Thought you were staying the night," he said. "Changed my mind," I said, setting the bag behind our record rack. "No peeking." "No promises," he said immediately. "There never are," I said. It still seemed funny that even if I wanted to, I probably couldn't go to New Yearing anymore. I could try with cousins, maybe, but they'd begrudge it because their cars were already packed full. Everyone always talked about how New Year's Eve was supposed to be fun when you grew up. Maybe this was my year. I went downstairs to the phone. First I called Zach to see if he would do me a favor, and miraculously he agreed, so I made my second call. "Tag, Mrs. Haddonfield," I said when George's mother answered. "Guten Abend, Louis," she said. "One moment, please, while I retrieve George." "Okay, I'm in for New Year's," I said when he picked up. "What time?" "Oh, 8 o'clock would be good," he said. "What changed your mind?" "Well, now that's not the kind of thing you talk about over the phone," I said, mimicking his false, fake mysteriousness, and laughed. "Oh, come on," he said, impatient. "See you in a few days," I said. When I got off, my ma was at the table, baking ingredients spread before her. Bags of chocolate chip, flour and sugar, sticks of butter, Crisco. "Are you really going to miss New Year this year?" she asked. "I thought you liked to go with Charlotte's kids." I knew this was coming. "All I do is babysit, and then in the morning, when Charlotte and Adam are sleeping off their party, I'm the one who gives out their cookies," I said. "By the time they get up to take us out, all the good cookies are gone anyway. I'll think I have a better time with my friend. Maybe I'll walk the neighborhood with Albert when I get home." "Well, just don't count on your uncle waiting for you," was all she muttered. "I guess I just have to take my chances," I said. All right. So here you see how Louis is moving away a little bit from Carson. He's kind of standing up to him just a little bit, but he's starting to stand up to Carson. So go ahead, do your exit ticket, and then tomorrow we'll do the next chapter, okay? Be good.